Okay, welcome to Midlife Without a Map. I'm Liz Champion. I'm a writer and life coach for writers. And I'm really excited today because we've got a new feature on Midlife Without a Map, which is called Meet the Author. And I'm really excited because a friend of mine and former colleague is joining me, Maria Frankland. If I just tell you a little bit more about Maria. So Maria Frankland is an author, poet, and creative writing teacher from Leeds. She writes psychological thrillers and nonfiction books for writers. Since turning 40, Maria has basically transformed her life, achieving her dream of becoming a full-time writer and inspiring many others, including myself, on the way. So I just want to say hello, Maria. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi Liz, and thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited to be the first one.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here, Maria. It's just lovely to see you again. It's been too long.
Been a few years, definitely since before lockdown, before all.
Yeah. And it's been great to see your success. You've just done so well.
Thank you.
So what I kind of wanted to let everybody know that we first met in, I think it was 2017, 2018. So I was working in the communications team at Leeds Trinity University.
That's
You
right.
just finished the masters there in creative writing, and
Yeah,
you just launched your first poetry book, which was
that's right.
Poetry for the
Yes.
Newly Something 40 something.
Yeah. Poetry for the newly
Newly
single.
single 40, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah, so we were doing some PR together and we were working together on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember you doing some workshops with us in social media, and you'd got kind of this vision of where you wanted to be as a writer.
Oh
And
yes. Yeah.
since then, you have just made it happen. You have got you got so focused, blinkers on, and off you went and did it.
Yeah.
So before we get into that and the publishing deals and all your success, let's go back to that time at Leeds Trinity with your first book. Tell me about your poetry pamphlet.
Right. Well, a lot of it was all the angst I'd poured into it whilst going through a divorce several years earlier. In fact, my ex-husband actually tried to sue me over it. So I'm warning there. But anyway, didn't get anywhere with that. So it sort of chronicled being trapped in an unhappy marriage to the escape from it and then life after that. So it was a very therapeutic book. But it hit a lot of a lot of people could identify with it, so it did a lot better than poetry collections usually do, because I only expected really to sell a few copies to family and friends, but it did go a bit further than that. So, and because of you, I got on the TV, I got on the radio, I was in Prima magazine. It was wonderful. So yeah, you really stuck your neck out for me there. It was so exciting. So yeah, I had a ball with that poetry collection, and I've always written poetry, so to get it published and for it to help other people as well was great. So it started really dark and sad and ended up being quite humorous, and the book kind of progressed from dark to light, so it had a real journey through it. So yeah,
Brilliant.
poetry book, yeah.
And I think you did well with the media and everything because your story is so interesting.
Mm. Yeah, well, I don't know. I think we've all got an interesting story to tell. It's a matter of pulling it out, I guess, and making it relatable, without giving too much of yourself away. I probably am a bit too much of an open book at times, but that's just me. So yeah.
So
Uh,
did you always want to write from being small? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever knew that I would get as far as I have. So I've really worked hard since I was 40, like you mentioned. Yeah, as a child, I had a really like many people, I guess. I did have a really difficult childhood. I ended up in care as a teenager. So I wrote stories usually to escape and poetry usually to pour all the angst into. So as a teenager, they were full of all the teenage rubbish. And in fact, I've still got them in a book. They're really quite embarrassing. But yeah, I have always written. It's, diaries, journals. I've got rid of all those now because they're equally embarrassing. But yeah, there's a real therapy to the page. And then if you can inadvertently turn it into something that can help other people, and like my poetry book seemed to at the time, and people are helped by my fiction as well. I don't quite know how, but because there's such relatable circumstances in the fiction I write now, that seems to reach out to readers. So I think if you can do that with your own experience, then it's just brilliant. But yeah, I knew I would always write, and even if I wasn't making a living out of it now, I would still write. There's nothing, I don't think, that could stop me, apart from having my arms chopped off.
So did you prefer to write poetry as you were kind of getting into to the master's degree? Did you prefer poetry, or did you want to write prose?
Well, when I first started, it was going to be poetry, because I sort of considered myself more of a poet. Now, I had written a memoir, which I'd published myself back in the early days of the Kindle. So I published it around about 2010, expected it to sell millions of copies. It was all about my son who's got ADHD. So I expected it to sell millions of copies, and of course it sold about 100. So that's sort of
That's
there
good
for
though.
years. So yeah, so I'd written a book, and I'd started writing a novel, my first novel, which was called The Man Behind Closed Doors. So that was sort of in a first draft absolute mess. But I'd written something, I had a first draft of something. But I considered myself to be more of a poet at the time. That's what I sort of seemed to gravitate towards. So when I signed up for the MA in creative writing, I wanted to do poetry, but then halfway through the course, I felt this real pull towards fiction. I think probably because I was single again and I was reading more. I was able to focus more on reading, which I hadn't been able to do when I was sort of surviving in the situation I was in before. And because I was reading lots of psychological thrillers, I sort of thought, this is where I want to go. So I switched halfway through the course, and luckily, because I had that first draft of a book there, I was already ahead of some of the other students who hadn't even sort of thought of an idea at that stage. So I was able to work on that in the second year of the MA. So yeah, it was a brilliant course.
I was going to ask you about the course. So
Yeah.
what led you to apply for that particular course? How was it?
Ooh, well, I was married to somebody who thought my writing was a complete waste of time.
Oh,
So soon after we separated, I went to a writing festival at Leeds Trinity,
yeah.
and there was a leaflet for the launch of a new course they were offering, an MA in creative writing. And it just felt like fate, to be honest. I thought, because I'd been to Trinity before, I'd done my teaching degree there. I'd been there for 4 years, and it kind of felt like a second home to me. My son was in the nursery there, and I just spent 4 really happy years doing my teacher training there. So when I saw that leaflet, I just thought, this course is just like meant to be. So I pulled out all the stops to get on it, because at the time I was a single mum and I was in quite a lot of debt, and struggling financially, and working a couple of jobs and doing cleaning to bring extra money in. So I thought, how the hell am I going to afford this? So I applied for grants left, right and centre. So I did get a couple awarded. So there was the Yorkshire Ladies Council of Education, and they gave me 2 grants, and there was a couple of other places, I can't remember. I went into the Trinity finance office and begged them to let me pay by instalments for the 2 years, which they did. And it was a real struggle, but I was determined to do that course. I mean, of course, you can become a writer without doing an MA in creative writing, or an undergraduate course in creative writing, but I just felt that when I saw the contents of the course, it was everything I wanted to learn about. And I think as well, if you make an investment like that in yourself, any sort of course, it doesn't have to be an expensive MA, but making any kind of investment does mark you out when you're approaching publishers. It shows that you're investing in yourself, and you want to progress and you want to learn. And for me, it just opened so many doors whilst I was studying that. I was appearing at literature festivals and open mic events. I was included in anthologies, and me and 2 other writers, we released a book together, which was really exciting. And I did so many things that I would have had no chance of having access to without being on that course. So, and I think above all as well, it just gave me the confidence to then go forwards, and from that I developed my courses that I teach, and yeah, it was just, I can't say anything bad about the MA. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, so many people have had such a special experience there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a really nice community feel to it as well. I think that the
Definitely.
MA
Yeah.
writing, a really nice bunch of people.
Yeah.
So when did you graduate, Maria?
Oh gosh, when did I graduate? 2015. So yeah, it's a while ago now. It doesn't feel like 9 years ago, but yeah.
Wow, time flies. So you graduated in 2015. Did you carry on working as a teacher? What were your next steps?
Yeah, well, like I've said, I was a single mum, and I was always looking at ways to earn extra money, because I had this self-published book out, and a couple of jobs, and I wanted to. I'd trained to be a teacher. I'd done an access course, and I'd done 4 years at university. So I was a trained, qualified primary school teacher, and I'd worked for 3 years as a primary school teacher, but ended up getting signed off with depression back in 2011. But I had these skills as a teacher, and I thought, and also as a writer, and I thought I can do something with all this, and I ended up I started with write a novel in a year, which I taught at the local night sort of community. It's a secondary school, but they have a community education program on an evening. So I was going in there and teaching that, and it was just so popular. Was this course that I'd devised? There was regularly every September there was 20 people enrolling, and I was also offering it in Harrogate and in Pudsey in Leeds. So at 3 different venues I was delivering this course, and people just kept coming to it, and it was brilliant. So I then extended out into write a collection of poetry in a year, and write your life story in a year, and also a collection of short stories. So in the end, by the time we got to lockdown in 2020, I had 4 courses that I was delivering, and that were popular. But then all that had to stop, obviously.
Yeah. I went on one of your weekend residentials.
Yeah. Basically what that was, it spun off from my write a novel in a year course, because I had several students who'd kind of got to the end of their first draft within that year. They knew how to get it published, but they'd finished the course, and then the momentum of seeing me every week dissolved there.
Okay,
So I by demand, I made up this course called Finish Your Novel and Get It Published. So many of the students that came back had previously done write a novel in a year, and there was a couple of others, yourself included, who just liked the look of this weekend retreat, and and what I'd put together there. So yeah, that was that. Yeah, finish your novel and get it published, which you have, and it's a very good novel as well.
You know what? I loved that weekend as well. It was lovely. Everyone together, getting fed, tea, coffee, biscuits, writing. It was just lovely. So if you do any more,
yeah, it's unlikely because I'm just so busy. I would love to, but then you kind of got to move with the momentum sometimes. Yeah, so I put all my courses online, so they're all available there with videos in and everything. They're all available as books as well, so which are nice and cheap. So because online courses can be expensive, but books are not, so they're accessible to everybody. So yeah, at the beginning of lockdown, when all that dried up, I just thought, well, I still want to get, and I thought people are going to need something to do in lockdown as well. So I just put them all online, which took a lot of work, and all into books. So they're still there. I just don't teach in a face-to-face way any longer.
Okay, so you finished the masters, you were doing your teaching, you'd still got these ambitions to become an author, have your books out there in the world, be successful as an author. And I remember you telling me that you were focused on self-publishing, becoming an independent author. Can you just tell us a bit more about that, Maria, please?
Yeah, well, it wasn't always the case that I wanted to be an independent author to start with, because I had this book that I've already mentioned, The Man Behind Closed Doors. And it actually took me 6 years to write that, all in all, which is a long time to take to write a novel. So I started that probably in about 2012, and it was finished sort of by 2018. So a hell of a slog. Luckily these days I can write a novel in about 3 months. So, but then, yeah, it was ridiculous. So I had this novel, and I ended up sending it off to lots of publishers, and I got 46 rejections, which is a lot of rejections, but it had a couple of near misses. So I attended the Harrogate Crime Writers Festival, and they have something, I don't know if it's still there, it probably is. They had something called the Dragon's Pen, where you had to go and stand in front of 4 publishers, you know, they're all big, from big companies, and you had to pitch your novel. You had 3 minutes. It was terrifying because there was a massive room full of people. But I was there with a couple of my creative writing students, and they were urging me to go forwards and do this. And I thought, well, you know, I've got to set an example here. So off I went. And it was terrifying. But 3 out of the 4 of these publishers wanted to see the full manuscript.
Oh wow, that's brilliant.
Yeah, so it had a near miss there, but in the end, none of the publishers wanted to take it forward. It also, I entered it into a debut novelist competition, which no longer runs, but it did run for 10 years. And it was an international one, and I got down to the final 10 with this book. So I didn't win it, so another near miss. And then I had another agent wanting to see the full manuscript, but then saying thanks, but no thanks. So 46 rejections later, and often you don't ever hear back from publishers. You send it off, you cross your fingers, and you don't even get a thanks, but no thanks. It's just, you don't hear anything. So very disillusioned by 2019. I thought, I'm never going to get a publishing deal. And it was my friend Jane Brown, who, you know, who's a fantasy.
I know Jane.
Yeah. She kept going on at me for months about people like Joanna Penn, who you might have heard of, and Mark Dawson, who are really big names in the independent publishing industry and who really do know the stuff. And she kept saying, you must listen to their podcasts. And I was just thinking, I'm never going to get published. What am I going to do instead? You know, I'm not going to be a writer. And I was like that probably for a month or two, you know, really sort of, you know, thinking I can't cope with any more of these rejections from publishers. How am I going to get my work out there? Because I'd self-published that memoir years earlier, and it hadn't really gone anywhere. So I was thinking, well, indie publishing's probably a bit of a dead end. But in the end, I started listening to these podcasts and following these people on social media and just learning from them, really. And within a couple of months, I was all fired up again. I thought, right, this is it. I'm going for it. And I set up my own publishing company. I thought, right, if no other publishing company wants me, I'm going to do it myself. So I set up Autonomy Press. And to be fair, I've never looked back. It's just, yeah, I'm now writing my 18th book. I write full time. It's just amazing. I've got a long list of readers who've sort of read everything, and they're eagerly awaiting my next book. And you know, it's just fantastic. So I would really recommend independent publishing. So
yeah. I mean, so much there. I mean, you said you've written 18 books, transformed your life, working full-time as an author, and you've done it so quickly. And I just find it really, really inspiring for people who are struggling to get published, not sure what to do, feeling a bit disillusioned, not sure what options to take. Can you, because I remember going to that weekend away with you, and you had, I think, maybe 3 books lined up ready to go.
Yes.
Can you talk us through that then, when they came out, what your plan was?
Yeah, so in that first year, 2020, I had The Last Cuckoo ready to go. So that was the second fictional novel I'd written, but I was releasing it first because I thought it would do brilliantly. I thought it was my better one out of the 3 I had lined up. So I had that lined up to go first, then The Man Behind Closed Doors, which I've mentioned, and then another one that I'd done the first draft for, which was called Left Hanging. So I had those 3 ready, and I also re-released my memoir. So I actually had 4 books ready to go that year. So it was a really, you know, as I approached 2020, I was also about to get married on Valentine's Day, remarried in the February. I had all these books ready to go, and then lockdown happened, of course. So there was really nothing other to do that year than write and work on my publishing business. So I did have that gift really of time available to me. But I guess I just learned there's so much to learn about the industry. With self-publishing, you can do as little or as much as you like. So you can do what I did back in 2010, and you can upload a book onto Amazon KDP, and you can hope by some mysterious force that people will find it and buy it. Or you can treat it like a business, which is what I decided to do 10 years later. And you can market your book once it's out there. You can make sure you bring the readers to you. But I think the great thing about self-publishing is you're cutting out that middleman who's saying no all the time, and you're letting your readers decide whether what you've written is any good, rather than, you know, a publisher who might be having a bad day or might have just accepted something reasonably similar. So you kind of leaving leaving that decision whether your work's any good to your readers, which I think is a really exciting thing. So,
That's brilliant. And how did you go about building your audience and getting those readers?
Oh, it's slowly but surely, really. I mean, I know it seems like it's happened quickly, but to me, it feels like I've been doing this for years. So I'm actually into my 5th year now of being doing this full time. So at first it was like crickets, really. So the last Cuckoo, the one I released in the March 2020, didn't really do anything, and in fact I got a terrible review about 3 weeks after it was released on the Amazon page. Oh, it was awful. I mean, I've since gone and had a look at this reviewer, and she does tend to leave scathing reviews on several authors. She should be banned. She's just,
if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all.
And it was really long as well. In fact, the headline of it was "Beyond Awful, -stars."
Oh,
it was the same week my dog died.
Marie.
Just after we'd gone into lockdown, and I was ready to throw in the towel. I really was. My husband had to sort of give me a good talking to and say, "You cannot let this one woman spoil your career." It was on the verge of trolling. It was that bad. So yes. If anybody wants to go and look it up, it's on the last Cuckoo, and it's a very early review, and you'll see what I mean. You'll see why I nearly threw in the towel. But I think what it taught me eventually, I can look back on it and laugh now, is that not all readers will like our work. You've just got to find the ones who do, you know, and keep trying until you do find them, and they do eventually come. You know, it's taken years for me. But one reader likes your work and tells a friend, or somebody you unexpected sees a social media post, and it just comes bit by bit. And I think the one thing that's really helped me is my email list. Which I started building even before I published my first book. So I developed what's called a lead magnet, which is essentially a free novella that I've written. That I use that to entice readers to come onto my mailing list, and hopefully then try and keep them there so that they can learn about new releases. And I think my readers gravitate towards me because I try and get to know them as well. And it's a two-way street. I love hearing from my readers. I answer to every single email I ever receive or comment on social media. I always reply, I always say thank you, because without them, I'm just like nowhere. So it's a real two-way street. It's a relationship, and I think that's why they stay with me and why more keep coming. It's that word of mouth.
Yeah. And you do the email list, you do social media. Any other marketing that you do?
I do advertising, paid advertising. So I do Facebook ads, which work for me really well. But they only tend to work for me if either on a brand new release or on a book that I've discounted to 99p. So other than that, it's, you know, it can get quite expensive. So it's I only do paid advertising quite strategically, and Amazon ads I really can't seem to get working for me. And I have spent a lot of money over the years trying and taking courses, but some authors get them working brilliantly. So I think it's with the genre I write in, psychological thrillers, it's a very, very saturated genre. There is a heck of a lot of good books, you know, that other writers have. So it's about trying to stand out amongst all of them. And yeah, so that, I think, you know, by reducing a book to 99p, you encourage a reader to, you know, take a chance on your work. And I'm in Kindle Unlimited as well, which I think really helps. So readers don't have to pay to try my work if they're subscribed to that.
Okay, so you've kind of talked about the business of being a writer, and
Yes.
you've got the 4 books, and you've got into a routine with your writing. So I'm thinking about this. The publishers came to you, didn't they, Maria? Do you want to tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so I don't know how many books in I was by then, probably about 10. It was my 50th birthday, which is amazing, last year. And I got an email from a publisher called Bookercho, and they're an imprint of one of the big 5 in the UK. They're called Hachette, so they're one of the big 5. And when I got this email through, you know, we all get so many hoax emails and scams and things that we have to be careful of. So I sort of stared at it for a few minutes. Then I told my husband about it, and he's like, oh, right. And we were both then frantically searching online to find out whether this was real, you know, or whether it was some kind of scam before I replied. And I left it to the next day before replying because I didn't want to seem too keen. Basically, this publisher, and she's lovely, I work with her quite closely now, had read one of my novels called The Hen Party, and she said it had stopped her from doing all her work that day. And she emailed me to congratulate me, and she pulled a couple of things out that I've done well. And then basically said, you know, how would you feel about having a conversation about your future as an author? So I'm like, oh my God, after all that rejection, that to then get sort of picked out. And I just think it goes to show that it happens. If you just keep going, eventually somebody will notice that what you've done is worth getting, you know, pushing out even further than you can manage yourself, because I'm very limited as to how, obviously I've only got, there's just me, so me and my husband, so we've only got a certain budget to pour into advertising. But yeah, a big publishing company can get me out there faster and further than I can ever dream of doing myself. So it's just that possibility of elevating things, and not just that, actually working now with she's really expert in psychological thrillers, so there's nothing she doesn't know about the genre. So I feel myself developing even more now as an author, and having somebody to bounce the ideas around with, which is really valuable. But yeah, I got that email in March. I was just like over the moon, really excited. I had to keep it quiet for 3 months until all the contract was sorted out and they decided what I was going to do for them. So I started, they took 3 of my backlist, one of which was The Man Behind Closed Doors.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, after its 46 rejections, it finally, yeah, they're actually changing the title, which I'm quite sad about, because that was like the book where I learnt my craft, and I poured so much into it, because I started writing it before my divorce, so there was a lot of all that angst went into it. But it, you know, it's a piece of work I'm really proud of, and I'm so pleased they picked that one up out of. So they're republishing 3. They've already republished one at Christmas, which did really well. And
was that Last Cuckoo? Last Christmas.
No, Last Christmas. Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
That's
yeah.
yeah, I've read that one. That's really good.
Yeah. So yeah, they've republished 3, and I've written 2 new ones for them, so they're all done. So yeah, this year is just going to be really exciting whilst I see what happens with these books.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's amazing. That's just you You know, the fact that it happened on your 50th birthday as well,
I
that just
know.
makes it so special.
I know. When I first spoke to her and I said, you realise it was my 50th birthday when you sent me that email. She said, was it? I said, yeah, I just couldn't have had a better birthday present, to be honest. It was
Yeah.
really exciting. But there was still a little part of me that thought, oh, I'm going to be, because I'm so used to making all my own decisions as an author. You know, I decide the titles, I decide the covers. Nobody can tell me if they don't like that character or that ending. So it's and my company that I've set up is called Autonomy Press. So to have now signed with the publisher as well and become a hybrid author, it does feel like some of my autonomy is gone. But it is worth it. You know, I'm not complaining in the slightest, but that took some getting used to, because that is another really good thing about working as an indie author. You do have all the control and the power over your own work, and you get to keep all your own royalties as well. Yeah.
So you say you've written 18 books?
Yeah, I've just started work on the 18th one.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so I've written 18 psychological thriller full-length novels, and then I've written 2 novellas which are free, which I use to bring people in. So one of them's free on Amazon and one of them's free if you join my email list.
Okay.
Then I've got my memoir, Don't Call Me Mum, which still sells and does, since I re-released it in 2020, that does well. But I don't tend to market that as much. I maybe have a push on it a couple of times a year. And then there's my non-fiction books that are my courses. So I've got 4 of those as well. So yeah, quite a catalogue now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on.
It feels really great to have written so many. When I first started out, I couldn't imagine having 18 books, but they just keep coming. I just keep getting the ideas. So if there's an opposite of writer's block, I think I've got
Well, we all need a bit of that then. Because you said your first book took 6 years to write.
Yes.
Obviously now you've refined your process. So can you talk to us about how you write, your process, your structure?
Yeah.
Basically what makes you so prolific and what can we learn from that?
Oh, right. Well, I think one of the main things I do is write just about every day. I take a bit of time off at the weekend now, which I never used to do. But I try and make contact with my work in progress every day. Even if I'm not contributing much to the word count, I'm researching or I'm editing. I'm doing something with my work in progress, because I think if you leave a gap or if you put it down for a few days, it's very easy to lose the story and for the characters to stop living inside you and for you to stall. So I think that's really important that I do that, and that's one bit of advice I'd give to all writers, to make regular contact with your work in progress, no matter how hard it feels to get sat in that chair, because you usually find once you sit down you can't bear to stop anyway once you get started. So yeah, so I am really disciplined and I treat my writing like a day job. Well, it is my day job. So, you know, if I have to be at my desk for 9 o'clock on a morning, I mean, obviously I can be flexible with that. I'm self-employed. So if I want to take the dog for a walk or do yoga or whatever, I can do what I want. But I do try and be in that routine of being at my desk for 9 o'clock. And then I write in blocks, so usually 75 minutes. So I do a 75-minute block of work rather than work. I work in time blocks rather than word count, because it's less pressured, I think. So whatever stage my manuscript is at, whether it's first draft, second draft, editing, research, I spend that time on it. Then after that first block, I have my breakfast, I have a break. Then I do a second block, then I take the dog for a walk, then I do a third block, and then I have lunch, and then I do something completely different in the afternoon, usually marketing and email stuff and admin and businessy stuff. But I do try and keep those blocks, and I don't usually make any plans before 2 o'clock in the day. So that's my writing time. And if I don't sit down and write, those words won't get written, and my readers who are all waiting for the next book won't get one. So I have to do it. Yeah. So it's about that discipline, I think, really.
Yeah.
And I can usually get my first draft banged out in a month now, with having those time blocks,
Yes.
another 2 months to get it all sorted out and wrangle it around and edit it. And so it's a 3-month process. So I'm releasing 4 books a year usually.
That's amazing. That's just brilliant. I love that. So what advice would you give to people, to writers who are kind of struggling, I guess with you know, the mental, you know, the confidence, the mental challenges, the, you know, imposter syndrome, not feeling good
Oh,
enough.
yeah, imposter syndrome's a biggie. I get that quite often. Even though I've got so many books out now, there's always somebody doing miles better than you are. So it's about maybe learning from what they're doing and seeing, how do they do it, and aspiring to that rather than letting it pull you back, I guess. But the confidence thing, I think it's about learning and investing in yourself. We can all improve our craft constantly. So I do that by reading in my genre. I've always got a book on the go and I read like the authors who are doing really well, who are at the top of the game in psychological thrillers, because I think somehow it infiltrates your own craft. Like I've mentioned before, doing the courses has really helped me. So an MA in creative writing isn't for everybody, and it is really expensive. But I've also done other like little courses, writing retreats, just one-off courses and writing workshops. You can get them all at literature festivals. And I think just going and attending those and immersing yourself in the world of writing and being amongst other writers who are all at different stages of development, it gives you that confidence to put yourself out there. You're often reading back something you've written and getting a bit of feedback. And it's like anything, you've got to practice it. If you were learning a musical instrument, you wouldn't a violin and play it perfectly straight off. It takes years of practice.
Yes.
And it's the same with writing. It's that regular practice. And I'm actually going to go back to The Last Cuckoo, which was the first book I put out, and I'm going to go over it again and edit it, because I've read like the first chapter and it's not at my standard that I write at now, although I was totally happy with it at the time. You improve so much the more you do your craft. So yeah, that will develop confidence, just that regular practice, regular self-investment, regular reading, and just treating it as an important part of your life as well. I speak to lots of people who say, oh, I want to write a book, and I could write, but unless you're doing it, you've got to get your bum down in that chair and get on with it.
And do you know what I've always loved about you? You've always been so driven. You knew what you wanted and you were determined to get there. How do you manage to be like that, Maria?
Well, I guess I don't have a plan B. I have no plan B whatsoever. I'm totally unemployable now because I've been self-employed for so long. So I remember actually throwing all my teaching resources in the recycling bin and watching the bin wagon drive away down the road with it all, and I knew there was no turning back. So I had to make my world of self-employment, teaching the courses, writing the books, I had to make it work. I guess to be perfectly honest though, my main support has been my husband, who is just like amazing, and he's worked 2 jobs for the last 4 years to let me go for it, which I just couldn't be any more grateful to him. He's finally now able. He's just given his notice in on his weekend job, so he works full time as a probation officer, and then works a daycare job on the Saturday. And he's done this so that he could cover the household bills, just to enable me to get this business off the ground. And it's taken a while to be in this position, but and get out of the debts and everything else. But it's just we've made it happen. But it's having him behind me as well, I think. So yes.
I just love that you've worked as a team and you were both determined to make it happen. I just love that.
Yeah, well, he's my first reader, and he tells me if something's rubbish, and he's my proofreader, and he calls himself my business manager as well. So yeah, so we are a team. I write the books, but I couldn't do it without him. And like I say, he's supported me. He saw that I had this dream, and just said, look, go for it. I'll take the reins with the house. You just go for it. And he says, I will await my Porsche once you're famous. So
Brilliant. I love
yeah.
that. So just going back to the craft of writing, Maria, do you plot or are you a discovery writer? What works best for you?
Oh, a bit of both, really. I tend to get an idea, and then I get to know the characters, and really everything else. Then I set off writing. So I need to know the characters in depth before I bring them to the page. And if anybody wants one of my character outlines, I'm happy to share those. So yeah, you can just.
I'll have one, Maria.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're welcome to give out my website address where there's contact me information. So yeah, I work on like a character template just to get to know the character, and then I find the more I get to know each character, the more my plot just starts springing out on its own. So then once I've got that sort of all starting to fire, then I start writing. But having said that, now that I'm working with Booker, before they'll commission a book, they need the full outline.
Okay.
So that has been so difficult because I am more of a discovery writer. So to actually nail down my plot before I get started, and even thinking of with me writing what I write, you have to have a twist in a psychological thriller, and they often don't come to me until I'm actually writing. So that's been quite challenging, but good as well, because it's developing me as a writer. So anything that takes you outside your comfort zone is worth doing. Yeah,
definitely. And what writers do you read? Who influences I can't speak. Who influences you?
Well, I read a lot in my own genre. And so let me think, favourite authors really, like Daniel Hurst and Frida McFadden, who are also published by Booker. But the big names in the genre, like as well, like Lisa, Jewel and Claire MacDonald, Claire McIntosh, and yeah, I read, like I say, I think their talent hopefully somehow works its magic down onto me as well, because I'm reading what works all the time, and it does somehow just go in. So I read lots of psychological thrillers. I know some writers don't want to read in the genre they're writing for some reason, but I find it helps me to be constantly immersed. And if I read something gentler, I'm often waiting for the murder, which isn't going to happen. Yeah. And then I do read lots of sort of craft books still on the craft of writing, on the business of writing, because there's always developments, there's always more you can learn. So I've usually got an audio book on the go as well. Always trying to just improve.
Oh, I love that. So what's next for you, Maria?
Well, I've got a mad year. So I've just released a book last week called Lockdown, and I've done that myself. That's an Autonomy Press book.
Okay.
But then in March, I've got Booker releasing the first new one I've written for them called I Let Her In. So I'm excited about that. And then they're re-releasing The Hen Party in April. But they've given it a new title. And then there's another new book that I've written coming in June for them. And then they're re-releasing The Man Behind Closed Doors in August. So yeah, just a mad busy year. So I'm just excited to see what's going to happen. And I've just started writing, like I say, novel at number 18, which I'm releasing myself in September.
Wow.
Yeah.
So exciting. So will you be having book launches and excited things?
Not normally. No. What I've started doing is, because Booker, when you release, they send you a lovely bouquet of flowers through the post to congratulate you. So when I released Lockdown last week, I ordered myself some flowers.
Oh, that's nice.
I thought I was balmy because the card said "Happy Publication Day from me to me." Flowers. But I just thought it's a really nice thing, because it's a big thing to write a book, and we should reward ourselves. So
lovely that you do that. That's brilliant. Do you know, I do it with cake.
Yeah. Oh yes, you and your cake. Even better, yeah. Yeah, I don't have a big launch as such. I just sort of put it out on social media, send a newsletter to my readers, and now get some flowers and then move on. Yeah. So if I had a big book launch 4 times a year, I think it'd be a bit much to manage.
So if a reader is new to your work, where do you recommend they start?
Probably come along to my website, which is mariafrankland.co.uk. And there's lots of bits for other writers on there. There's access to my courses, my books, but then there's I've given like 10 tips if you're a new author, and there's some resources there. Like I say, you can contact me through my website if you've got any questions. And then all my books are just on Amazon. Just search for Maria Frankland. That's where all my fiction books are, and all my non-fiction books are under MV Frankland. I'm not going to tell you what the V stands for.
I'm intrigued now. And is your book of poetry, is that still available as well, is it?
It is, yeah, through Stairwell Books. That's under my maiden name of Stevenson with a PH. So yeah, it's not one I tend to promote anymore. I've kind of moved on from it. I did write a sequel to it though, but again, I don't promote it, called Poetry for the Newly Married 40-something.
Ah, yes, I remember seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's on Amazon, but I don't really promote my poetry anymore. One day I might sort of pick it back up again, and 'cause I do get poetry ideas all the time, but sometimes you've just got to double down on what's actually working. And for me, it's my psychological thrillers. I'd like to do it all. I'd like to be a poet. I'd like to run writing retreats and courses and do it all. But I've just got to focus down on and put my energy and my time into what's actually working and what's going to make sure I can keep doing what I love to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to others who want to go down the self-publishing, traditional publishing route?
Yeah, I've probably covered quite a few of these already. So getting your bum into that chair,
yeah,
and writing, actually doing the work. Even if you can only manage half an hour, it's it all adds up. So yeah, getting your bum into that chair, and being really disciplined. Invested in yourself, just learning, improving your craft. It only needs to be a 2-hour workshop every so often, but you come away just buzzing and feeling more inspired and more empowered to go back to your computer and carry on. And believing in yourself as well. I think this is an industry that's so full of rejection and so full of scrutiny from other people as well, and those reviews can be hard to read sometimes. They usually start off quite nicely because it's all your regular readers, but then you get somebody come along with a 1-star horrible, and I don't read them anymore. I just focus. 99% of my reviews are good, so the criticism can be hard to ignore and hard to get past. But so you've just got to believe in yourself from the word go. What I have is worth saying. It's worth listening to. Readers want to read my words, and you need to keep telling yourself that, and just having that, ingraining that belief, because otherwise it's hard to get over.
That self-belief is everything, really.
It really is. Yeah. It's hard to put into words just how much you need it.
Yeah. I guess if you don't believe in yourself, who was going to believe in you?
Exactly. Yeah. It does take a certain confidence to put your work out there, especially your first couple of books. And I guess as well, don't expect your first couple of books to hit as well. It can take a few more. I started picking up probably at about maybe about book 5. Yeah, when I could really sort of see a solid income coming in. It really takes time to build up that readership, and I remember putting my first book out expecting 1 million sales, and it just doesn't happen. Being realistic. Yeah, and just knowing it's going to take time to take off, but it's so worth it. The 5 years now that I've been doing this, the flown, they felt like a long time when I first started out. It felt like I'd never get there sometimes, but now I look back, it's gone really fast.
And I remember sitting next to you in 2017-18 when we were doing some social media training together, and in that time, it's not that long ago, but you have completely changed your life. It's just absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
I love that, and it's been just really nice to see you, Maria, and catch up.
Yeah. It's an honour to be the first person you've interviewed.
It had to be you.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, and best of luck with your writing, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yes, definitely. Okay.
Take care, Maria. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.